Okay, I'm going to talk about cellular respiration and photosynthesis, which are two concepts which will most definitely be tested on this test. So it'll be just a brief overview. So if you want to go in more in depth, you want to listen to Vicky's lecture again or read your book. But hopefully this will be a quick overview that will concise the information that will help you for the exam. So let's start with cellular respiration. Um, I would suggest doing this. Just take 5 minutes, pause this, and write down everything you can think about cellular respiration. So the three things you'll definitely need to know are the equation of cellular respiration, the three steps, and what is produced in each step, and even where those steps take place. So we'll go through those real quick. So what is the very first step of cellular respiration? Hopefully you said glycolysis. So glycolysis is the very first step of cellular respiration. It occurs in the cytoplasm. It creates two pyruvates, which I'm not sure that Vicky even really talked about. But the big thing is it creates 2 ATP and it creates NADH. Now if you remember, NADH is a molecule that carries electrons, which will eventually go to the electron transport chain to create more ATP. So glycolysis, the two main things you should definitely know here is occurs in the cytoplasm, and only 2 ATPs are generated. She talked about anaerobic respiration, which is only glycolysis, which creates 2 ATPs. And in the case of humans, it creates lactic acid, and in yeast, it creates carbon dioxide and ethanol. So you're a little bit familiar with that as well. So what is the next step of cellular respiration? The next step is the Krebs cycle. The Krebs cycle takes place in the mitochondria, so the two pyruvates enter the mitochondria. It produces carbon dioxide as a byproduct. It creates 2 ATPs and it creates more NADH. Again, this is the molecule that carries electrons to the electron transport chain, which hopefully you kind of grasp that it is the last step in cellular respiration. This is the big money maker. It creates 34 ATP. It occurs in the mitochondria, and a byproduct is water. But again, the big thing here is 34 ATP. If the electron transport chain does not work, you will not be able to survive very long. This is basically why we need to breathe, because oxygen is what we call the terminal electron acceptor. It picks up those electrons that the NADHs drop off at the very end in order to allow this process to take place. So this is just a quick outline, a brief overview of cellular respiration. The electron transport chain, I like to think of it at like this video here. So here in the video, the slinky can be thought of as the electrons. So the electrons are being dropped down the steps. So this is basically what the electron transport chain does. And if there is no oxygen to pick up that final electron, it would be similar to this, where it just stops. So anyway, kind of a silly video. So let's move on to photosynthesis. What are the two steps of photosynthesis? So the two steps are the light reaction and the Calvin cycle. What is the equation for photosynthesis? This is something you'll definitely need to know. So let's just go over the equations real quick. For cellular respiration, what's required is glucose and oxygen, and it creates let's see here. And so glucose plus oxygen creates carbon dioxide and water. The great thing about photosynthesis is it's exactly the opposite. This also creates ATP. So photosynthesis is just the opposite of this. So it requires carbon dioxide plus water, and then that goes to glucose plus oxygen, and this requires sunlight as well in order to do this. So those are the two equations you're definitely going to need to know. I could definitely see a couple of questions come off of that. So just be aware of that. Okay, so we got the light reaction and Calvin cycle. So the light reaction, it requires sunlight, produces oxygen, and splits water. So the splitting of water is what produces the oxygen. And the molecule that takes those electrons is very similar to that found in the electron transport chain, but instead there's it's NADPH. So the P can stand for photosynthesis, so that helps you remember. So then the dark reaction, the Calvin cycle, produces glucose. So this is just a quick question to kind of help you. We'll kind of go over a couple of these things. So which of these is used to create glucose and other organic compounds? So you have RUBP, CO2, NADPH, G3P, and ATP. So let's just go through these. So RUBP, if you remember, this is the starting molecule of photosynthesis. This is what it starts with. If you don't have this, you cannot go through photosynthesis. Carbon dioxide is what is fixed in order to create glucose, and it comes from the atmosphere. Then NADPH. NADPH is what carries those electrons that are produced in the light reactions by the splitting of water. So again, that P right there can stand for photosynthesis. So she could ask you what carries electrons in cellular respiration or photosynthesis, and have both NADPH and NADH. So be aware of that. P stands for photosynthesis. G3P is actually the correct answer to this question. This is what's used to create glucose and other organic compounds. And ATP is the energy that our cells use. So, and just a little bit of ATP is produced in photosynthesis. So here's a couple of questions that potential test questions. So the final electron acceptor of anaerobic respiration is, which of the following? Carbon dioxide, oxygen, ATP, or NAD+. And the answer here is oxygen. Again, this is why we need to breathe, is because oxygen is the final electron acceptor. NAD+ is what carries the electrons to the electron transport chain. Waste products of cellular respiration include glucose and oxygen, rubisco and glucose, sodium hydroxide and water, water and carbon dioxide. Hopefully you can immediately eliminate two of these, B and C. If you remember the equations, rubisco is not in it and sodium hydroxide is also not in it. So that leaves you with glucose and oxygen or water and carbon dioxide. And the waste products of cellular respiration are water and carbon dioxide. Glucose and oxygen is what's necessary, or in other words, those are the reactants. The last two, where does the Krebs cycle take place? Hopefully that's not too difficult of a question. It takes place in the mitochondria. And how many ATP are produced in glycolysis? 34, 4, 25, or 2. And D, or 2, is the correct answer. And remember, in cellular respiration, the total ATPs produced is 38. We have 2 from glycolysis, 2 from the Krebs cycle, and then 34 from the electron transport chain. So hopefully that helps with photosynthesis and cellular respiration.